All right, so here's the deal. 2 Hour House was done 20 years ago. Hard to believe, really. And then the 20th anniversary is going to be October 5th, October 1st?
October 5th.
October 5th. So we're talking 2025.
No, October the 1st.
October the 1st, 2025.
Okay.
Yeah, October 1st. And so, you became the president of the Home Builders Association back then, and you were looking for a way to increase the association's membership for the following year. But sometimes a simple idea has the ability to make a real difference. You end up breaking a world's record. So talk about when you were in Las Vegas, when did the idea come in and what was going through your head?
Well, we were at our consultant, his name is Chuck Shin. We were at a seminar with him. It was a production management seminar, and he showed a video back in the early 80s of the Home Builders Association in San Diego setting the record. And they did it in right around 3 hours or something like that. And after seeing that video, and thinking about it, it just motivated me this would be a great project to try.
Yeah, and as far as Brad said, y'all went and got some Coors Lights and figured out how you're going to break the record, you and Brad Root.
And my brother.
And
I don't even remember, it was so long ago.
Yeah, I'll be able to raise you. Remember, I've heard a lot of different stories. So here he is. He comes to Tyler. Home Builder Association says, we want to break a record. What did you think when he said, this is what I want to do?
Well, I had seen the Chuck Shin video that they had done at the time, so I knew kind of what it was about. And it was, the systems that they had to create to get that done. And at the time, I think Chuck was really challenging all his students, per se, to not necessarily do this project, but he was looking at processes and how you could improve upon it, continuous improvement. And it was just a neat thing that he got to use it as an example of what people can do when they come together. And so I was aware of it. Now, us actually doing it in Tyler, I thought, we're not San Diego, so we're not nearly as big, I'm sure, as a home building association, but heck, why not, so.
What the cool thing is, here you are, the actual house was in San Diego, built in 3 hours, 44 minutes, and 59 seconds. And then what happened from that event, Brian comes back and realizes that he can actually build a house in less time. And in fact, we're talking about a 2,300 square foot house that exceeds code in less than 3 hours. You're talking about building a house from start to finish in a time to watch a Monday Night Football game. Mm-hmm. So tell me about your naysayers, how you approached it. And I think you made a comment to me the other day about meetings, how they don't know how to run productive meetings. So kind of walk us through that timeline, what was going through your head, who you had to convince. Tell the story as much as you can.
Well, the first thing, we were, Chris was working with us as well, but we started off, we'd been using Chuck Shin for a long time. So we already had a lot of these systems in place and scheduling in place and all of this, and so kind of started making a rough timeline of how it could be done and kind of backed into it on how to get under the 3 hour mark. So once we started allotting times to everything, then I went to a core group. I had to find a core group that would help me grow it, and so I went to these Brad Root and a couple of key people that I was real good friends with in the association at the time, and showed them the idea and was like, this is how we can do it. Let's put a team together and do it. And it just started growing from there. I mean, there were a lot of people that said, you're crazy, but they were on board. They wanted the challenge. So there was a lot of naysayers, and my dad was one of them. He said, you'd never make that happen. And but after running all the times and, doing everything we'd done in scheduling, we just figured we'd make it happen.
The cool thing about that is we all have our processes as systems, and it guarantees that the work gets done. But can we make it work smarter, better, faster? Mm-hmm. And it's pretty amazing, but you really never get to that point till you're challenged to do it. You never told the crew chiefs how to do it. You just gave them the amount of time they could.
I just said, exactly. I just said, we had, for instance, I don't remember what the exact time was, 8 minutes, let's say, to hang the sheetrock. And I said, figure out how to hang it in 8 minutes. And I gave him kind of an outline of, okay, it's going to take X amount of sheets to hang, to do the whole entire house. If you have 2 people doing each sheet, how many people do you have to have hanging sheetrock at the same time to hang 150 sheets of sheetrock? And so we just kind of backed into it that way. And then we used a lot of, we were taught one way, but we had to think outside the box and come up with new solutions and new ways to do things that, time management to make things quicker.
The cool thing about that, you were the outsider that was not directly involved with their processes, but you inspired their potential, and then they went back and figured it out how to do it.
Yeah, and that was one thing, is just giving them control. I didn't want to micromanage everything. There were too many people. We had, I think, 600 people that started off on the whole project. And, that's one thing I did not want to do is micromanage it. So I found leaders that would, just delegate to them and put them in charge of a task, and they put their own task force together and came up with a way to make it happen.
As somebody outside looking in, to come up with a project to build a house to increase the association's membership, and in the bargain benefiting local charities, was a great idea. But we all have great ideas, or at least ideas we think that are great. But the real obstacle was convincing a group of tradesmen, construction workers, and volunteers to challenge themselves, to really liberate their mind, because everybody tells you it's not impossible. But they had to really think through what can be done. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. And it was, when you think of something that big, it almost sounds impossible. But when you take each step, just like that, hanging that many sheets of drywall was a pretty enormous step in it. But like, I was in charge of I was the chairman of the garage door committee. That's key to a house, but how quick could we get a garage door hung? And when we were given the green light to go, and I had never hung a garage door in my life. I've seen it done, and I've scheduled it to be done, but not done it myself. And so same kind of thing as we had good companies and good tradesmen that knew how to do it, and it got their wheels turning. How could we do this faster? What if it wasn't just a crew of 2? What if we had each person holding, whether it was support or rail or the putting the door together itself? They came up with exactly how to do that and did an amazing job on it.
Yeah, if I understand, you go ahead.
That's where a lot of the solutions came from, is just asking the people that do it every day. Instead of us telling them how to do it, we asked them, what's a better way? And all the feedback you get was, incredible. The garage door, it usually takes several hours to hang a door. I think they did it in 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, it was under what I think you gave us as our time requirement, that was a neat process in and of itself, because the guys went back to their shop where they had space and they built a big life-size jig to practice on. And then they actually invited me out well before the 2-hour house and said, watch this. And they were like it was like a NASCAR crew changing tires. And I just went, well, I think we got it. I think so. I'm so glad I could lead you guys.
Yeah, what's cool about that, I remember him telling me you had 10 minutes to do the garage door, and everybody's going, no, it's impossible. Next thing you know, you figured out how to do it in 3 or 4 minutes, which is a big deal. Those are little nuggets that I think is important. Especially doing this, pass it on to the next generation and trying to develop future leaders and shift the mindset. That's kind of the purpose of what we're, that's why the story is freaking so important to me.
Well, and everybody realized too that there wasn't one piece of that puzzle that wasn't important, more important than the other. Everything, if it wasn't finished, it wasn't finished. If we didn't beat the time, we didn't beat the time. But the person in charge of, extension cords was just as important as the person doing the drywall or something, because if one thing got missed or messed up, then, we wouldn't break the record.
It's funny you said that. That's even in our organization, my takeaway from the 2-hour house was, your front desk person, director of impressions, if she's just as important as anybody else in here, even the way she answers the phone. So I'm kind of piggybacking in a small scale what you're saying.
Yeah, because no one, you're handing a ball to every single person, and the one person that drops the ball ruins it for everyone. It was a huge team effort. So,
let's talk about meeting. When you guys got together and did the meetings, when you said that meetings are just not as effective, you just share what you mean by that, and then what you experienced at meetings as we went, if you don't mind.
Well, we had so many meetings, between just the core group, which I say the core group was the chairman of all the different tasks. So you had somebody over drywall, someone over garage door. So everyone and those main guys met every, I guess, 2 weeks or something. And then they were in charge of going out and meeting with their task force that were in charge of doing the actual, job itself. So there were so many meetings, you didn't want guys showing up to a meeting and it be a waste of their time. Everyone needs to walk away with something positive from a meeting. You have a lot of board meetings you go to that you sit there and talk for an hour, but nothing gets accomplished. There's nothing. It's just a waste of everybody's time. And that's one thing that I was trying to preface on these meetings is, make sure everybody walks away, feeling like we got something accomplished at that meeting. And, how to run an effective meeting and how to stay on an agenda and do different things like that, I thought were really important.
I agree. The meetings were I enjoyed them because, once we figured out we could do a garage door really quick, it was listening to everybody else. I remember, Brad Root calculating the weight of the roof structure, so he could give it to the crane people, and right there, well, he couldn't lift the roof structure with people on it roofing it, but yet in San Diego, because safety and codes were different at the time, they actually lifted that thing up, and there's guys actually on the roof still roofing it. We had to have all that done before they were going to let anybody near that and set it down on the walls itself. So there were a lot of those little nuggets that you heard. You thought, man, we've never sat around and calculated the weight of the roof, structure itself, and so it was neat to see them go through. Okay, well, what's a square of shingles weigh? Okay, what's OSB weigh? What's the trusses per truss gonna weigh? And then any other the blocking or anything you needed there before you could set it down to get an actual real calculated weight on that roof. So, that was, that's one thing I remember. But there were a lot, but they were productive. And I think everybody walked away each time with a task. Okay, here's the next thing to tackle, and here's the next thing. We've got, we feel like we got that resolved, but this is still an issue or a gray area, and how to put it together.
Go ahead.
You had to make people accountable for
Look at this.
You had to assign tasks to people and make them accountable for it and do follow-up.
So you're saying the roof had to have the electrical? You didn't put any plumbing, that's down low. So you had to have all this all built out before you could put it up and lay it on the house,
It had
right?
HVAC, so the air conditioning system, part of the plumbing, and electrical, all the light fixtures, everything.
Everything all together before you take this baby
And lift it and move it.
Look at the drawings on the inside.
And
I don't know if y'all remember, but look at that. I mean, to have this thing to begin with the end in mind and working backwards, you darn sure can't build it. You had to deconstruct everything before you can put it together, right? And is what had happened with this deal.
Oh, yeah.
One thing with the roof section too. So once the crane lifted it, let's say we had the roof sitting over here. Once the crane lifts it, it can only move in a perfect rotation. It can't move forward and backwards and all that. So we had to exactly locate that crane where it was going to sit to where it swung around and then dropped it straight on the roof and make sure everything was clear when we did all that.
And we're talking about a time when Hurricane Alicia came through. Talk about all the electrical stuff and all the bumps that you had to run into just to order your stuff in Oklahoma.
Yes, so we had cranes, we had everything lined out, generators, all that, and I think it happened, two weeks or something before it?
Yeah,
It was Hurricane
it was a Katrina.
Katrina, yeah.
Yeah. And so we lost all of our cranes, we lost our generators, we lost everything because they sent everything to Louisiana. So that was a challenge in itself to get all that, because we had grandstands set up that would seat over 2,000 people. We had a practice house, and then 2 weeks later we had the record house. So there wasn't any rescheduling, all of this.
So was the practice house before the storm or after the storm? Did you have the regular cranes or did you have to rent those cranes?
I think it was before the practice house.
Before the practice house. So let's talk about the practice house. You had a lot of people walk off. I think you were going to do two houses.
We were going to
at
do
one
two
time.
houses. We
A
had two
and B.
teams competing
Right.
against each other. The first one didn't make it past the concrete. The second one, after, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours, we were not even halfway through, and I just told everybody to go home. We'd learned enough that day. So
Yeah.
So what did you do with those two houses? Did you, the cement, you never got past
we
it,
had
so
to
you
tear
to
that
chop
one
it
out.
up.
Yeah.
And then the
And then
other
the
house,
other one, we ended up finishing it.
you ended up finishing it, and then you had to go find another location to have this 2 hour
No,
house.
we had
done?
it planned for the same neighborhood. It was
In the
just
same
right. It was
neighborhood,
right
but you
down
had
the
to go leave
street.
it somewhere else and built the house.
Yeah.
So how did people handle failure? How did you handle failure when it didn't work? How did you handle all
Well,
your buddies?
it wasn't.
I mean, go ahead, just
It wasn't failure in my mind. I mean, it was a practice house, and that's why you practice. A lot of people saw it as failure, and that's why they quit. But we learned a whole bunch from it, and that was the purpose of it. So the biggest thing we learned was communication. You know, everybody looked the exact same out there. All the noise and generators running and concrete trucks running and everything you couldn't hear, you couldn't communicate. So we had to come up with a simple solution for that. That's why the concrete failed, because they couldn't, they had practiced this and they had the concrete mixture down, but they didn't account for how loud it was going to be. So when the final person yelled, dump this one chemical in that was very time sensitive, then part of them did it, part of them didn't. Well, the concrete was coming down the chute of the truck and just set up in the, up literally while it was sliding down the chute, ruined a brand new truck. So what we ended up doing on that is we went to, just basics. Went to a flag system, a colored flag system, and one color meant one thing, one color meant another, and so no one had to talk. It was just all visual. And then we color coded our flow chart, which was a critical path flow chart. So we color coded like drywall, I think was, I don't remember what color, red maybe, plumbing was blue, framing was brown. So everybody on all the crews dressed up in those colored shirts. And anytime you looked out there, you could see exactly who was on the house and what stage it was in just by looking at what color shirt they were wearing. So that was a huge help in it.
I agree. Because the first one, remember, I think it kind of got doomed from the beginning because of the concrete mixture getting dumped in too early, and they couldn't, get it out. Of course, then as part of that dynamic system, it's like, okay, now we debrief, and they came up with the color coding system and a few other changes like that. So they're able to just once again improve upon what we already knew, and then had some real world experience at that time to make the necessary changes. So yeah, it was,
when you say work together as teamwork, I mean, I just want to make sure I've got this right. We got you set the forms, you dig the footings for the foundation before the concrete is poured and finished, which takes you a day to do it, right?
yeah.
Then you got to pop the lines before setting the walls.
Well, you got to
That
set the
takes
forms.
another
You got to
day.
get plumbing in too. You got to pull off the forms to set
Yeah.
your plumbing.
And then you got to
drain
rough in the
lines.
plumbing, you got to rough in the electrical, put in the wall plumbing, and then sheet rock. Then you got to insulate the roof. Then you got to tape and bed the walls.
Paint.
Before another come paint the walls. And then
Yeah, and that's where the schedule comes in play. So we had a critical path schedule, and that means that one task had to happen before the next one could happen. And then we had tasks that could happen simultaneously as the critical path. So in other words, they could be over there putting hardware on doors and different things like that at the same time we're pouring the slab, or they could be framing walls, putting electrical in them at the same time we're pouring the slab. So everything kind of started, I think, in 4 different groups, and then as we got closer and closer, they just started kind of combining, and until we got to the final product.
if I understand it correctly, the cement mix, they used a 13,000 psi or something like that, and
Yeah, I think
they
it was.
used that on the highway.
It was
patrol.
30,000 psi.
Is it 30,000?
Yeah, we
Okay,
poured
and-
40. I think it was 48 yards of concrete in 28 seconds.
28 seconds. That's
And it
amazing.
was- and it
you're
was-
talking
yeah.
about making sure their boots don't get stuck, and you got to see it to believe it. So 22 minutes it took to dry the.
Yeah, and that's after we slowed it
Foundation.
down. We had the concrete setting up, and literally, I mean, I saw test batches of it done, and it would set up in 60 seconds. I could walk on it or drive on it in 60 seconds.
And you talking about the Texas Department of Transportation uses that cement mix to dry its roads. So, innovation from an event could apply to.
And we brought a bunch of new products in like that. I think that house was the very first house. We had the City of Tyler Inspection Department involved in it. They were involved in almost every meeting to make sure it met or exceeded code. But like that was the very first house in Tyler to ever have PEX tubing in it. Now
Had what?
PEX tubing. So the tubing that goes in the walls for the plumbing, it replaced copper. And that's, now that's all anyone uses. You don't even see copper anymore. But that was the first house that we brought in that ever had that.
And we're talking teams. Of course, you had teams that was, and we're talking about landscaping,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Fence.
even all the way down to the doorbell.
I think
Kitchen
planting a
cabinets,
tree.
bathroom fixtures,
Granite countertops.
granite countertops, floors, roof. No, we hadn't talked ceilings, and then we hadn't even talked about the roof. So you're talking about days to shingle the roof. My buddy right here wants to do all that in 3 hours. I still can't believe it. I mean, if you look at it, and it's amazing. Now, didn't different work crews knock out their deal, and then they were volunteered for other tasks, right?
You may know more about that.
Yeah, there were several people that helped in one area, and like for instance, the plumbers, once they finished doing the rough in, we needed a lot of help moving walls in and carrying the walls
Yeah,
in.
I do remember
So
that.
everybody, did that because the wall might be, I don't know how long they were, 60, 70 feet
Yeah.
long. And and it was already built and had electrical and plumbing in it. So you had to have a lot of
Instead
people
of
to carry
outside
that.
the house building in, you actually built it in out. Is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and some of the time-saving things we did, for instance, I keep going back to sheetrock, but normally you would finish the outside of a house before you finish the inside. Well, it was a lot faster for us to feed all the drywall through the outside walls and drywall the inside of the house because of, managing people. We had to actually create a traffic pattern for people. You walk in this door, you walk out that door. But we sheetrocked the house first, and then we insulated it from the outside, whereas traditionally you would insulate it from the inside. But we were building it so fast, it didn't really matter what order we did it in. So we did all that, and it sped up quite a bit.
To me, having a vision, what you want to accomplish in life, is the easy part of the journey. But one thing I've learned, that you realize that other people could do things faster and better than we can. And so you could focus on the things that are important to you. And it's one thing. And not only that, when we were going through, when I first saw his dad, I was drinking a Coors Light going through the Texas Motor Speedway, and I'm showing his dad showing the 2-hour house on video. And I said, man, every business principle that I learned in business is in that story. And he says, what do you mean? Brian goes, I said, Brian, we could do a leadership book. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, man, leadership, motivation, time management, organization, efficiency, it's all in this story. And to me, I like the house analogy because it's kind of like what we do here. What do you want your house to look like, which is your life? What do you want your business to look like, which is your business? What do you want your community to look like? You still work vision, end in mind, and work backwards, and you can make anything happen. Is the kind of the way I see it in my head. And so that's and so personally, Chris,
Yeah.
in your personal life, in your business life, looking back, what do you think it's done for you in your business and your personal life?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways from that, because we knew we were going to do this, but we weren't going to necessarily go out and build multiple houses from then on in 2 hours. But you can see it from now, 20 years later. I've stayed involved with the Builders Association, immediate past president too now. But you see it, we're one of the cities that works well with its building department. A lot of cities are it's the headbutt kind of thing, and we still communicate well. They still come in and do education, for us, especially like upcoming code changes or something like that, so we can all be ready. So you saw that. You saw trades that don't normally communicate each other on a a normal job site. All of a sudden, they're elbow to elbow. So plumbers became friends with electricians, framers became friends with those guys, as opposed to, a lot of times, framers are done, they leave the job a little messy, and, one of your mechanical trades comes in, and it's like, why do they do this? Why do they leave? Now you've got some camaraderie and communication. That was a huge takeaway that I think still lasted in the association to this date. So, and in our community, I think that was huge, especially then. Everybody knew each other at that point. It wasn't, the framers club and the drywall guys club and the electrician club. It was, everybody started seeing themselves as part of a bigger team than just their immediate trade. And that's huge. And I think that still lives on today.
I think that was the biggest thing that I saw was just the teamwork and the fact that, like Chris said, the trim carpenters would go in and, they'll do the trim work and hang all the doors and everything in a house, and then they leave. And then the painter shows up. Well, they never communicate with each other. Well, we had them sitting down at the table together, hey, painter, what can the trim carpenter do to make your job faster and easier? It's not going to cost him any more time. And just little bitty simple things.
Yeah.
And that's what we actually implemented that in our business. We
I
call
was
it
going to say
quality
it was
council.
soon after that. I think I was the first to get to chair that, but we had a quality council and we did it all the trades together. Sometimes it would be trade specific, just the electrician companies and working for the home builder. But a lot of times it was that, what is a warranty item that keeps coming back, what can we do to change that? And so that's part of that deconstructing it. Okay, what are we doing that we could change it? Is there something we can do framing wise to block it better when we have a vaulted ceiling and it tends to have cracks in the drywall after 3 months, that we're trying to repair? That created our ability to go back instead of just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. The definition of insanity. It's like, okay, let's change the process here, and then we'll input that, and then see if we have a result. And if we don't, then we'll try something else. I don't know that really existed before that.
Yeah, the quality
quality
council made a really big difference in our company, in the quality and communication and teamwork and everything of all the trades. And that's kind of, we got that out of the 2-hour house and we did it.
You kind of bored after that when you were trying to find something else to do so you can find another impossible.
That was a big one.
It was fun enough, there ain't no doubt about it. It's like another, what's next? And you ask yourself sometimes as we go, what's next?
But I tell a lot of people and challenge them as well that, it can be done faster. There's absolutely no question in my mind that house can be done in 2.5 hours. I mean, with the technology we have today, and we didn't have any kind of electric DeWalt tools and, and all that kind of stuff back then. And we were using air hoses and extension cords. And, that alone would speed the process up. But, we learned a lot just from the real house itself.
If you're talking to your kids or grandkids going into the future, what would you say to them that would be their takeaway that you would want to make sure that they knew from this experience?
Anything's possible if you put your mind to it and put a team together.
Yeah, don't let yourself get overwhelmed when you feel like it's an insurmountable problem. Take it one step at a time, and then you can start to see that picture develop before you.
It's funny you said about team. When you realize people could do things better and faster than we can. And, as we were going through all this, as we were talking about all the business principles are in there, teamwork, efficiency, goal setting, mindset, leadership, you can go on and on. But the one common denominator was communication. Because you can't have leadership without communication. You can't have collaboration without communication. You can't have teamwork without communication. So there is an art and a skill set that if you want to prove something, improve your communication skills, so you can be clear on what you're saying. I would think that would be. What would you say your Chuck Shin and your dad probably taught you? Because you're really process oriented, and what do you think that they taught you that had a huge value in your life?
That's a good question.
Just think about that. How about you? When you were going through.
Chuck is such he's got a dynamic personality. Kind of, I think it's that, total quality management. It's not just the process, but it's evaluating a process, looking at the end result, and then, like I said, changing that so that the input side of it, you get what you want in the end of that. And efficiency, trying to be more efficient. I mean, that's how we're going to keep the, cost of housing down. That's one key factor in trying to do that. We're trying to do our side. Sometimes regulatory issues change our ability to do that. But if the more efficient that process is, the less scrap and rework that you produce, then you're able to hold those costs down. And every time we're able to hold costs down, more people can afford them. And we can put more people in housing. I mean, look at it right now. We got the housing crisis. And that's just one aspect of being able to fix that, is to be efficient.
It's funny you said that. I mean, that's kind of what we do here is, I don't think you begin with the end in mind. You know what to build the house, what you want. Then you get your taxes and insurance and investments and retirement all to work together to make that a reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a simple metaphor.
Yeah.
And so I just love the house analogy. And even in business, if you're going to build your business, you got to work it backwards and take those baby steps to make that a reality. And it's kind of like it's the same process. So, do you think that the Home Builders Association really understand what really happened at that time, or do you think they know maybe 20% of it? Maybe
no,
10?
I mean, I think they definitely did, because pretty much everyone in the Home Builders Association was involved in it. But I think when, there were some changes after, I stepped down as president, and, we had a new EO and new president come in and all of that, and they just had a different vision, different, agenda to do.
Yep. So if you could change one thing, what would it be?
Regarding
life or from that experience. I think we covered what happened with the practice house and what you learned from that. I mean, you had a lot of naysayers, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, there were naysayers, and then there was but it's not going to be worth living inside of it. And I can honestly say, because Brian was president of Conaway Homes at the time too, we got to warranty that house, which fell under my umbrella. And I can honestly say we had one
callback.
One callback, and it was for a leak. You have to understand that there was as I remember, we had a little nook in the garage for the washer and dryer, and the manifold for the PEX plumbing system that we put in the new system was right there, and so they were sure it was leaking out of the manifold somewhere, and coming out, and you could see wet on the floor. Well, come to find out, it was their washing machine. Had nothing to do with the house. So that was one of them.
We honestly
had warranty call.
We had less callbacks on that house, which we only had one.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a defect.
Having the houses we do every day, because it was so over-engineered, and everything that went in it had to be perfect. Every stud had to be picked. There wasn't any room for any error. Yeah, so that house is stronger and built more sturdy than any house out there, because of the beams and the roof structure had to be designed to not only hold its own weight, but be lifted and hold a negative weight too.
Yeah, I mean, you had the building inspection department out there in referee shirts. I mean, rarely do we have to have a building inspector on site the whole time. They come, when you call them to come, so you can move ahead.
Got excited about the project.
Oh yeah, they were really.
Everybody was in, all hands on deck.
Yep.
And that's it.
The more people heard about it, the more people that wanted to just get in on it and be part of it, whether it was marketing or actually helping build the house or doing refreshments or, whatever it was. And you got to remember too that everyone out there that worked on it volunteered. No one got paid.
They always say success sometimes requires us to refuse to accept our business and perceived personal limitations. And just like with the house, by challenging ourselves daily to liberate our entrapped mind, which only serves to tell us that dreams cannot come true, we're all destined for remarkable results. That I believe. So anyway, thanks. Appreciate that's. I don't know what's going to come out of this, but I know good things are going to come out of it.
Yeah.
So we'll tell the darn story, and
you'll
have
started.
a desk. You'll have a desk and share it with kids, grandkids. But and then we need to plan a big.
Yeah, we need to go back out
20-year
to Alan
reunion.
Get
Hudson's.
everyone together. Yeah,
Alan
absolutely.
Hudson's. That would be perfect. And he was involved in that house too. I did not know that.
Well, we had the kickoff party out at his place.
Yeah, that's a
I don't want to
perfect spot. I
volunteer
went out there
Alan
during the
for it,
Super
but
Bowl. No. I went out there to the last Super Bowl. I went to the Super Bowl, then I flew back in Sunday and went straight to his house because my wife was out there. So you got to go where your wife's at. We got it, and then wait till you see how all this comes out. That's perfect.